I do love a good old identity crisis. And please don't get me wrong, don't go away, stay with me for this. I have my reasons for saying this. In no way I want to minimize the stress that comes with having absolutely no anchors and nowhere to go, and not seeing actually a way out of that crisis. And sometimes it can be really disheartening not having a single grip or anchors that allows you to actually find your bearings again. But an identity crisis, what it is actually an opportunity to look past what we had. It's an opportunity for us to let loose and set free from everything that it was in the past and rebuild something in the way that we wanted. And I do believe realistically that that's what life abroad is all about. It's about a massive identity crisis that starts the moment that we leave, and then sometimes it comes in cycles. We may not want it, but it does happen sometimes, and we are trying to figure it all out. And I want really this episode to be just about identity crisis. And you may wonder, why identity crisis when we talk about relationships? And well, just stay tuned. I'm going to share that pretty soon. So without further ado, welcome to We're Here Too, a podcast about mental health and life abroad. My name is Francesca. I'm an Italian counsellor living in Scotland. And today we are going to talk about identity. I just want to dive straight in. When we are unsure of who we are, we often become susceptible to external validation. And so criticism, even when it's well-intended and there is, one intention behind it, can really feel like a personal attack because it touches on something that we are already uncertain about. And on the flip side, for example, compliments or affirmations may feel disproportionately important. And we may really seek that continuous validation because we are struggling to find it within ourselves. And when we move abroad, we live in this place where we don't necessarily have that. And when we lived abroad, even for so long, because relationships are changing continuously, and that's the reality of having other migrants or expats or foreigners, whatever word you want to find there that works for you, right? But when we find other people who moved abroad as part of our social network, then the social network shrinks and expands, and we may not have a lot of people around them because there is so much change around us. Then we may experience those identity crises a bit more often. Lack of a social network can really trigger us, and so then as a consequence we become a bit more increasingly sensitive to how other people behave around us or what they tell us. Basically, our perception of the world around us get a bit tinted, and it becomes difficult then to pull ourselves out of it, especially in a moment where we're already feeling like we're going through a massive crisis, and then the social network that we have available to us, then we start doubting it, and it creates this massive spiral that sometimes had some ramifications that are very unpleasant and overwhelming and difficult to manage. If we do not feel rooted or anchored in ourselves and whatever is happening around us, then it becomes really hard for us to be open and authentic with others. We might hesitate to share our thoughts and feelings out of fear that they can be exposed to uncertainty. We just do not know. And when our social networks are ever changing, then, we would never maybe find really the right footing and the right space where we can actually settle, and then the fear can dissipate. We might also struggle as a consequence of this, like to actually trust others, and we're unsure whether their perception of us is true, where we don't even know how to define ourselves. And I find this particularly important, and that's what I've I suppose, like, I notice in the work that I do as a therapist, is that, like, sometimes when we wear a mask, we are giving out informations about ourselves that are not necessarily true to us, and the people around us that start building an understanding of us based on information that they're not necessarily true or very representative of who we are. And then we basically start engaging with this dance where people are reacting to us, but not really to us, to a projection of us that we are offering, and the connection is missed, and opportunities to relate are missed, and associate, those are missed too, and we feel extremely isolated. And when there is an identity crisis and we don't really know what we are putting out in the world because we are not sure within us, then the situations in which we are not feeling connected and associated to others can actually increase. And again, it can make things a bit worse for us. And sometimes what I've learned for myself is that when those times come, the sharing with the people around, like, there is so much up in the air, and I'm not really sure who I am right now, is for sure, at least it is for me, the only way forward. So I know that I'm not misrepresenting myself, and then having to use energy to actually explain and to correct an understanding of myself that I communicated that is not true. One of the other things that I've noticed is that every time I've been through an identity crisis, I started doubting and questioning long-standing relationships. So relationships that once felt steady became strained, and friends and families and partners I had may not actually recognize the new version of me, and they reacted in ways that reinforced, like, old identities that I was trying to move beyond. And this for sure created, like, a lot of tension. It led to miscommunication, resentment, distance, and if you spoke to my friends and family, especially my family, they would tell you that distance is definitely one of the things. There were periods where I was just like, well, okay, I'm not just gonna disappear for some time. And when you live abroad, it's so easy. You just don't answer the messages, you don't answer the calls, you don't go back for a visit. When people suggest to come and visit you, you come up with excuses. And I found all of this incredibly fascinating after so many years now under my belt of living abroad, that this is, like, so cyclical. And I could look at this in so many different ways, but I suppose in this moment in my life I look at this because I think I'm going through, like, my identity crisis right now, and I am looking at myself and I'm quite amused and amazed that I'm doing this again. If you've lived abroad long enough, you would agree with me that it's very cyclical. But I suppose, again, that there is something incredibly growthful in all of this. We are learning in the process of going through like identity crisis that actually we are learning to listen to our needs more deeply, because there are, eventually if we manage to see that there are no limitations in those moments of crisis, because everything is up in the air, then we get to understand ourselves so much better. We get to answer our needs in a much more intuitive and genuine way. And we learn how to communicate more honestly. We learn how to create healthier boundaries, and we start seeking out relationships that actually are more aligned to the person that we are becoming. So if anything, these identity crises are literally like an opportunity for us to embrace maybe what have not had an opportunity yet to be seen, to be explored and heard and shared with the world. So don't estimate a good old identity crisis, I'm telling you guys. And I'm going through one, so it ain't easy on my end, but sometimes we just have to sit back and see this process unfold and take what comes, I suppose. In previous episodes, I talked about finding a balance between adaptation and integration, and identity crises usually happen in around those times where we're trying to find that balance and understanding what it is that we want and how we want it and why we want it. Really, we have it when we are re-evaluating our why for staying in the place that we are. And in all honesty, like up until very recently, I just wanted to leave Scotland so strongly. Like I felt like I had no reasons to stay, and I was finding all of those reasons in the wrong things. Now things change. I'm not necessarily saying I'm going to stay here forever, but things have shifted in that respect, and I know there is so much else that needs to shift. And this is like, it's my invitation to you. My invitation is to think about like what parts of you are absolutely non-negotiable. So no matter where you are, what it is that it's non-negotiable. No matter what happens, what it is non-negotiable. The things that you don't want to leave behind. If you think about like other aspects of your identity, what do you think can actually stretch and adapt or soften without feeling like a loss? The point is, when we are in the middle of an identity crisis, we don't have to leave everything behind. We have anchors, we still have us. That's not changing. That's still okay. That's still there. So the entire point of this is like finding yourself and who that person is and maybe, and not discard who you were in the past, because who you were in the past brought you here in this very present moment. You listening to me, to the podcast, and be the beautiful person that you are in that place abroad where you live, where you've been living for quite some time, I suppose. That person exists. You cannot erase it. You cannot erase that beautiful person, and befriend it. You never know what like stories is sharing with you, and when you connect to others and the world around you, that person will be there. And the best thing that you could do is to actually honor everything that has done to you and make peace with it. As simple as that. I suppose like the takeaway that I want you to get from this episode about identity crisis is fundamentally one. Let's use this as an opportunity to move from performance to presence, to learn that we can embrace change without losing connections, and that ultimately the biggest gift that we can give ourselves is the one of being fully ourselves, to give us like an opportunity to go through the emotions without judging ourselves. For sure, and this is like undeniable, if it wasn't for the old me, I would have never met incredible human beings who are still friends nowadays, and they live so far away from where I live. But I do know I can count on them 100%. And we're not talking as much, but I know we're there for one another. And if it wasn't for the person that I've become and I'm becoming, I would not be able to connect to people in this new way that I'm connecting right now. So there is something about like in the process of adaptation and integration, I'm learning what the boundaries of who I am are, and what I'm willing to let in and what I'm willing to let go of. And I know there is so much flexibility in this, and I suppose that's why this identity crisis it's okay. Like, I'm really embracing it, and it doesn't really feel as a crisis anymore. But as such, it's just like something that I'm going through, and that's because change happens because we are living. We cannot think ourselves out of it. Changes happen because we are alive, because there are many other things that are alive around us, and we don't have control over them, and they're going through their motions, and you know, we get to decide ultimately how we want to face them, to face all of these changes, and what the way that we decide how to face these changes will impact the relationships that we have, that we're going to form, and how we're going to move forward with them. And with this, I'm going to say thank you for listening to another episode of We Are Here Too. And if you want to get to know more, some behind the scenes and literally anything podcast, just follow me and subscribe to the newsletter. That's what I really wanted to say. Cheerio, and see you next week. Bye.